Hello everybody, my name is Justin. Welcome back to the studio, and in this video I'm going to show you how to turn your scrap leather into a profitable product. So obviously based on the thumbnail, you know I'm making an AirTag holder. If you want to purchase my plans for this product, you can go to the first link in the description. Now obviously this design isn't that original, but it is done from scratch, and if you've been looking for a way to help support the channel, purchasing the plans is a great way to do that. So let's head over to the bench and see what we're working with. So the plans have a few different styles. There is one that has the cutout in the middle so that you can see the Apple symbol, and the other one does not. So you have those either option there with whatever one you want. The reason I have both is because I'm going to be using my laser to cut these out, so making this circle is quite easy. If I were to cut these out strictly by hand, I wouldn't do that because cutting a perfect circle is extremely difficult to do by hand unless you have one of those circle punches, which would be perfect for this project. But if you don't have that, this is going to be a little more difficult. The circle also takes a little bit more time to do because you have to punch it out and then you have to burnish the inside. So if you're looking for a very simple product, I would say just use the blank front so that the AirTag is completely covered. And for the back part, we have two different styles here. One of them, the D-ring, is held secure with 3 stitches, and the other one, the D-ring simply wraps around and then is held secure with the snap button we're going to use to create the flap to hold the AirTag in place. So a few different options. Again, if you're cutting this all up by hand, I would say omit the circle unless you have one of those circle punch sets, which you can get. This is a 25 mil diameter circle, so if you have one of those, this will be super easy to do. Today I'm going to show you how to make each one of these versions. So by hand, I'm going to cut out this one, and then I will cut out a more complex one with my laser so you can see how both of those come together. So when I'm looking at scrap, the biggest thing I'm looking for is the marks or defects within each of these pieces. That's usually what most of my scrap consists of, is going to be the parts right near the edge of the leather where you have the folds or you have brands. There's no brands on this one, but marks, scars, that kind of thing. So that's the only thing I'm going to be looking out for in terms of this scrap. The other one, which may be more common, I'm not sure, is actual offcuts from other projects. So this is an offcut from my 8.5 portfolio cover, and you can see this piece is basically pristine. So is this one. There's no marks on here, so those are two really good pieces. So let's take a look at these ones first and see what we can get out of it. So trying to lay out the AirTags to maximize each piece, and this one will fit barely. So that one could definitely fit on there. If we go with a shorter one, it may give us just a little bit more room, but I don't think it really matters. So this one will work well here. Oh yeah, this one works better. So that's a perfect piece for there. Now this, I can definitely lay out in the laser. This may be a little tight. I would have to have it, if my pieces are oriented like that in the software, I could orient my piece on an angle. I may be able to get this to work, but that's going to be pretty tight and require pretty precise layout within my laser, which I can do with my measuring system. I showed that in my X-Tool S1 review video of this machine right here. how you can actually be very, very precise with your layout. So that could work for that one. Let's take a look at this other piece. Obviously that can work there. Taking a look at this other scrap. This piece looks nice and solid, so there's no issues here. So we can get a piece out of that. And here, so there's another one, another product. This one can get a piece out of that. So then we would need a long piece, which we could get out of there. So there's another product. And then that's one, that's a full product. This one, we could get a piece out of there. That's got a pretty good mark in it. I wouldn't really use that, I don't think. So let's say we did that. So if just on a rough layout, this one is too narrow, so we won't get a piece out of that. So just looking at our pieces here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 products we can get out of this. So if you're going to a market, holiday market's coming up for me, that's why I'm going to be making these products. Here's 4 products that I can sell for about $20, $25 maybe. So this is almost $100 in product. And what's my cost? Well, my material cost is almost nothing because most of the scrap has already been paid for through the sale of other products. I have a D-ring that cost me a few cents, and then a pair of snap buttons to secure it, which is another few cents. So it's basically pure profit, $100 in scrap that would otherwise be in the bin. So for this one, we'll toss these ones aside. We're gonna go ahead and cut this one out manually, and then we'll bring this one over to the laser and we'll laser that one out. So let's start with the manual one. So that one's done. That was pretty straightforward. That only took a minute or two to get all that punched out. So pretty quick product to cut out, which is great. So now we're going to take this one over to the laser and then get this cut out. And then we will stamp our logo on the back. Okay, so this one I've got laid out. I've just aimed to get my cut piece square within the bed. So I've lined up my X's, my laser mark with the edge or top of the key holder, and then with the top part here so that I know where to align my start position of the laser, which is right there on the screen. I've got my framing set up so that when I hit the power button, it outlines it and it matches my template perfectly. So now I can remove that, close the lid, framing completed, go to process. That looks good. I'm going to hit start, back over here, and hit go. And that's that. Simple, simple. Same thing with our other piece. Got that set up, got that lined up, got my screen ready to go. I need to close the lid first. Hit start. And then go. So just a quick note on the time it takes to laser cut this versus this. Let's assume I hadn't laser cut this hole and we looked at two identical pieces, either hand cut or laser cut. The time is probably actually longer for the laser because I'm only doing one. If I was doing multiples, the laser would be way faster. But when you're using up scrap and you have to set up each piece, the laser can actually take a little bit longer because you have to set up each piece. The difference is that this edge that I cut with my X-Acto is not perfect. There's deviation, there's deviation in the surface. It's not consistent and it's not exactly the same as this piece behind it because it's all cut by hand. My laser is obviously perfect. So when this comes together, it goes together perfectly. It makes sanding a bit easier and more consistent. With the hand cut, it's going to be a little bit more work. You can see my hole here doesn't line up exact. Doesn't that matter? No, the snap button will still go in just fine. So is it more efficient to use a laser? Obviously, if you have a giant sheet and you're cutting these out, yes, 100%. If you're working with scrap, it's maybe a little more efficient to cut it out by hand. I would probably still take the time to set it up in the laser. Just some quick thoughts on laser versus hand cutting. Better, worse, different. Just different. Anyways, let's get these logos punched. So we got the sun shining right in on here. Should really have a better light set up over here, but we just got the one big light up there. So we'll make do for now. I'm not doing anything fancy to stamp these logos. I just have a little paper template that I use as a bit of a guide. kind of put my logo on there, remove that, and then just eyeball, make sure it's roughly square. Fortunately, my logo is basically round, so if I'm slightly off, it doesn't really matter. If you have a logo that's maybe writing, you'll probably want to go and make sure this is nice and square, because you will see it if it's slightly off. I'm just going to cold stamp this. No foil press or anything like that. I think this suits the style of this product. I am going to be using a 5mm stitching and my Ritza thread, which is why I'm doing the cold stamp. If I was doing a finer stitch, I may go with a gold foil, but I like the cold stamp for my 5mm stitching. Now, if you're going to be doing a lot of these, a few dozen, you may also benefit from a little bit of a jig setup. Maybe have this stamp in your arbor press secured so that it's always in there, and then you just put your workpiece underneath it against a guide. That will be way more efficient than doing it this way each time, which is what I will probably do when I get into my kind of production mode, when I start making these for the markets in December. There we go. Okay, so once our logo is stamped on the back, we can get this portion cleaned up, and then the top portion of our front piece cleaned up. We're going to leave the main part where we stitch to finish after, but it's easier if we do these now, especially because we have to add a snap to this one, so it will be closed. We won't be able to clean up that edge after. And then I'll also do the center for that one. So just get these edges cleaned up, polished, and the ladder snaps. So our edge finishing is all done. So you can take the edge finishing as far as you want. If you want to go ahead and finish these edges to a mirror finish, go for it. If you want to basically leave them raw, go for it. That all depends on the style of product that you're producing. There isn't a right and wrong. It's simply, does it fit your style of product? I like to add a bit of finishing. I don't add edge crease anymore. I like a nice burnished edge, even with my 5mm stitching. So that's what I go with. Okay, we're going to start with this short piece. If you got your plans, this one's called short. This part has the male end, and then the front has the flat part. So make sure you put these together in the proper order. So go ahead, turn on my point of view. And then while we have our anvil still there, we'll go ahead and do this one. So this one is going to fold over, and it's going to snap in the front. But before we do that, we're going to stitch. So once stitched, that's what this piece will look like. So we can go ahead and punch, get this one assembled. Good. Now the two front pieces. Perfect. There we go. And just like that, we are recovered. Got that piece cut out. Make sure you install your D-ring first. Don't forget it like I just did. Much better. That's in like that. This will go in like that. With the D-ring in place, we'll go ahead and we can stitch this one now. So the pattern has the holes marked for the 5mm. If you're using a different spacing, then you go ahead and just draw a line and then use your irons. This one is set perfectly so that they gap exactly to the edge. this wraps around. We'll stitch those, and then we'll wrap each edge as well. And we'll double stitch across the whole thing. Make sure your D-ring is in place before you start stitching. We will start in the middle. And then back stitch around the end. Try not to pierce your thread. Try to get your stitching to stack nicely as well. Whew. Barely have enough thread, or barely have it long enough to get that one through. But we got it. And then we just need to back stitch one more hole so they both end up in the middle, and then hopefully I can get this one back through. If not, I'm just going to snip that thread. Feed this through, and then thread it, and then pull it through. That way I'm going to burn an edge on each side. So you could have just stitched through, and then I'll have two ends on the back side, but I like things being symmetrical. So there we go. Melt that. Melt that. Give it a little hammer. If I can fit it. I don't even think I can fit it. There we go. There we go. Done. So now we can glue these together and then punch our holes. So just thinking out loud here, as I put this one in particular together, you can place the snaps differently on here. So you can see on this one, or on both of these, the front part is on top of the tab that wraps around. On this one, what you could do on this one is actually flip this around so that this outside button with the flat face is actually here. And then you could have that tucked under. And then this one would have the flat face. Give it a different look, right? So you can then see the tab on the front. And then pops open, and then it's held secure versus that. Because this one sits kind of wide. This one sits flat. Because we've used the actual snap button to secure this flap here, it sits flat. Seems to sit flatter than here where this is loose. A few options. It doesn't change the measurements of any of these, but keep that in mind when you're placing your snaps. There's kind of a few options you could go with. So punching these out is nothing fancy, just a matter of following the marks on the template. If you're using different stitch spacing, then obviously mark yours appropriately so that it lands evenly. So this stitch spacing is 5 mil. So if yours is 4, your start and stop point may be different in order to get the spacing perfectly even around your piece. I'm not sure if it works out, but if you start here in that first hole with a 4 mil, you could, by the time you get around, finish further down or further up, so that when you look at it, your stitch spacing isn't straight across. I don't use 4 mil or whatever, or I just laid this out for 5, so I'm not sure the actual spacing there, but either way, you can figure that out with your irons. Done. Stitch. Time to stitch. So the length on this is going to be 4 inches. So 4, 8, 4 times, I'm going to do 5 because I don't want to run out. So 5 times my length. Go with a single pierce. Now I'm going to go ahead and stitch this in my vise, just to make it a bit easier. You don't need a vise to do this kind of stitching. You could just do it freehand. I just like the consistency in the tension that you get by using a vise or stitching clamp, stitching pony, versus doing it freehand. I find the stitching, you can kind of see the tension isn't as consistent. And in terms of stitching time, I think it's about the same. Stitching pony doesn't really save you time. I don't think that's why you use it. I think it's more appropriate, or I think it's more a case of the stitching pony allows you greater consistency in your stitching, And I think it makes it a bit easier because you don't have to hold the piece while you're stitching it. So maybe there's a little less hand movement when you're doing it in a stitching pony versus doing it without. I don't know, let me know your thoughts on that. What do you think is the main benefit of using a stitching pony versus doing it freehand? Let me know in the comments. Chime in. Thoughts. If you want to see a video of me reviewing 3 levels of stitching ponies, there'll be a link somewhere up here. Check that one out. That one's got a lot of good comments, a lot of people chiming in with their thoughts. So go have a look at that one. Just trying to get this thread to stack properly. So one's going to go on top. This one's going underneath. Tight. There we go. Now we can hammer down those stitches. There we go. Let's do the other one. And there we go. Those are pretty good. So now you can get those edges cleaned up. And just like that, they're done. So those turned out pretty good. I like the stitching on here. That's a nice detail versus without. They both work. Not sure this is worth the extra effort or not to stitch that versus just doing this. I don't know. What do you think? Is the extra stitching time worth it? I think customers are going to notice. You think you notice that these are side by side, will they pay more for that? Probably not. Anyways, there you go. Those are two. Oh, let's put the product in. So, with the product in its final resting home, see how it looks. There we go. Looks pretty good. Let's check it out in this one. Obviously this one doesn't have the window. What's nice about this too is that in time, especially with the glaze harness, this will wear really nice and really form around the AirTag. Looks pretty good. I'm happy with those. Which one do you like better? Let me know in the comments. Okay, what's up? Okay, that's a wrap. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Questions, comments. Which one do you like best? Which snap direction do you think would work better? I haven't actually field tested these, so I don't know if one's better than the other. I'll be doing that over the next month before I bring these to the markets in December. And you can get the plans for this on my website, norfolkhandmade.com. There should be a link somewhere up here. And not that you need more reasons to keep scrap, but I hope this video has given you a reason to hang on to maybe some of the nicer scraps that may be too small for a product, at least you think. And then you find something like this and you realize that's a moneymaker. I'm going to hang on to scraps. And in case you're wondering, my scrap bin is that. Once this is full, I go through it, toss out the stuff that really is junk, and then fill it back up. So that's how I keep my scraps organized and not too overwhelming and cluttering up the shop. And as usual, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.